Hi, everyone. Once upon a time. I don't know where my story began, but it was somewhere here. Well, this was a bit later. This was Instagram. I have 165 followers, and my story is collected there. Um, Lots of fragments and pieces of my story are there, and I guess a lot of my story is trying to have ideas. I spent quite a lot of my time trying to come up with a good idea when I was studying in Oxford. Did my PhD on Soren Kierkegaard. He spent a long time trying to work out where good ideas come from, where the truth comes from. And so a lot of my time, my early career was in storytelling and truth finding. But a guy who writes a lot better than me is a guy called Stephen Johnson. And he wrote a book called Where Good Ideas Come From. And he encouraged me in this book because he basically said that good ideas come slowly. It's about the slow hunch, not the eureka moment. But most of my life seems to be, it seemed like a good idea at the time kind of instances. So I often think, I wonder what that guy was thinking. Where did that good idea come from? I'll give you a moment to have a look at that. So my idea, and just the idea that's governed the whole of my career really, is that it's this: nothing makes sense until you tell a story. Nothing at all. In fact, my story, my life doesn't make sense until I begin to narrate it. So based on those ideas, I kind of went back to the days when I was a priest in the Church of England, and I got philosophical. So we live in a universe full of 100 billion stars, and we're not even at the center of this universe. And the reality is nothing makes sense, just a series of meaningless, chaotic moments that are random. And so what we've done over human history is to tell stories. We've attempted to overlay meaning on that meaninglessness and make coherence, to make something of the lack of story by telling stories and to bring meaning. And we've done it throughout human history and in all sorts of ways, and can see some examples there. But we find this difficult. So take a look at this from BuzzFeed. People find making sense of things difficult. This was an article called 20 People Who Should Never Be Allowed to Decorate Cakes Again in Their Life. I wonder, you can't really see it, but do you see the cat? I wonder what made that cake decorator think that cat was Cap. And I spent quite a lot of my time thinking about how my children, I have 5 kids, the youngest are 11-year-old twins, I recorded for a while the sense-making that they were doing, and you can enjoy a couple of those. The bottom right is my favorite. It will change the way you fly, because when you look up, when you're seated, you will realize that you will never be allowed to brush your teeth again. And this guy talks about stories and the way we make sense of our lives by telling stories. His name is Jason Silver. And one of the things he talks about is that stories are a deciphering mechanism whereby we make meaningful patterns. And it's that idea that I'm really taking to the work where I am now at the International School of Brussels. I have an office just in the top right there, and it's a nice building, and it's surrounded by 1,600 kids in the middle of a forest. I've been there 11 years, and I've spent the last 11 years thinking, what the hell is the story of my school? How do we make sense of this? Because the reality is, it seems to me, is that parents who come to visit our schools find learning very difficult to make sense of because there's no story. So they walk into a school, it's like walking into a car mechanic's shed. And in fact, we find it very difficult as parents to actually understand what good learning looks like. And we use lots of cliches. So, for example, we have a look at, we have cliches such as, we educate the whole child. That's a story that no one understands. And there are some people, I think, who walk into my school and think, well, are there some schools where you just educate the foot? So we've spent a lot of our time over the last few years thinking about how do we join the dots for people so that when they walk into a school, they actually see a story that makes sense and they actually understand what good learning looks like, so that when they look at those dots together, somehow it makes a picture that is meaningful and not chaotic. So I work with a team of about 12 people, and that's our job description. Officially, I'm responsible for many of the business operations of the school, but for 10 years, we've actually worked with that job description. Our job is to tell the story of the school as admissions professionals, as communicators, as fundraisers, as people involved in innovation, and tell it in ways that invites people, that avoids the cliches. And here are some of the things we've done. We've used images of hedgehogs to recruit teachers. We've actually used some of our teachers who stand in the middle of a wall, and we take pictures of them to tell that story in ways that are engaging, coherent, meaningful, and realistic. And sometimes we create videos where we get it wrong. This was a girl who, the first time we filmed her, we actually asked her to tell the story of the school. We asked the wrong question, so what did she say? She said, well, I like the lockers, and the teachers are fun, and I like playing in the playground. So it didn't really capture the story of the school. And so what we found was we had to ask different kinds of questions to unpack that story. And now we're beginning to look at different kinds of future stories. We're beginning to think about what would it be like to be a school where innovation is at the heart of it? How is that story going to change over the next 10 years? We know, like the top left, that we're going to make mistakes. We know that sometimes, like the right, that sometimes education and the story of learning is in challenging context. And we also know that sometimes whatever story we tell, somebody will see a duck when another person will see a rabbit. So, that's it. Once upon a time, that's how my story began. And I guess as an educator, as a philosopher, as someone who is passionate about stories and still only has 165 people following me on Instagram, I'm kind of figuring out where this career, this school, and where I'm going to end up. Thank you very much.